On today's Locked On Giants podcast, Rob Kane of Locked On Golden Gophers joins us to talk Tyler Nubin, safety, the New York Giants' second round draft pick. That's coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and on Google Play. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Trainer, your host, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for Giants Country over on the Fan Nation Network, part of SI.com. Find us at SI.com/NFL/Giants. And welcome on into my everydayers, my Blue Crew community members, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we are continuing our in-depth look at the New York Giants class of 2024. We're up to pick number 2. That would be safety Tyler Nubin from Minnesota. And here to break them all down with me, tell us everything we need to know about him, is Rob Kane, a.k.a. Kane, who is the host of Locked On Golden Gophers. Kane, welcome on board.
Hey, thanks for having me. I can always get down and talk about my Golden Gophers.
Let's talk about this Minnesota defense. What is it about it that allows these safeties, these cornerbacks, to become ball hawks?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just like they have the blueprint now. They've seen what it takes, and there's such a community. This program has really developed a strong culture. So a lot of these guys are coming back and they're giving tips and they're giving insights and they're saying, this is what you need to improve on. And then the coaches have developed that now. And so I feel like the relationships and seeing how it's done has just been coming to fruition. And they see the blueprint. And if they put the work in, if they put the effort in and grind, they have the answers to the test, and hopefully they can make it happen. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these safeties and defensive backs starting to find success here from Minnesota.
All right, let's talk about Nubin specifically, about his game. I mean, we obviously there's the ball production, the ball hawk production. What else does he do well? How does he handle the run? And is he more of a cover 2 or quarters guy? Where's his best fit, do you think?
Yeah, I think if you ask Tyler Nubin, he'll tell you he is a Swiss Army knife. He can do it all, and he plays with that mentality. I think he plays really well in those areas. I don't think you would necessarily always want him maybe single high if he needed to come down or get across the field from side to side. He doesn't have that blazing speed, so sometimes that can maybe be a weaker part of his game. But besides that, I feel like the biggest thing that Tyler Nubin stressed in his time here in Minnesota, and it constantly showed itself, was that he is a high IQ player, field IQ, recognizing plays. He grinds film like it's his day job, and he enjoys that aspect of it. And then it finds its ways onto the field through that instinctive play and everything. So I think what you're getting in Tyler Nubin is a guy who's going to put in every ounce of extra work he can to be as successful as he can. So I think you get a guy who has that, and then you got a guy who is a leader on and off the field. These guys follow him. They follow his mindset, his attitude, and how he goes about the game. And that is what has led the Gophers to some successful defensive seasons over these last few years. Now, last year, it was a bit of a struggle year, but it was also a year where outside of Tyler Nubin, we didn't have a whole lot of starters coming back to the squad, and yet he still stood out amongst the bunch. So I think he definitely showed that talent is there and present.
Where does his game still need to mature?
I think sometimes he can play a little bit of hero ball, and I don't know if that was because the Gophers had a little bit of struggles with injuries and what have you last year, but sometimes he can be baited into maybe a pump fake or a double look or a double move or something like that, and that's where he can run into some troubles at times. I know in the Northwestern game and the Illinois game, which are two games the Gophers should have won last year, but it came down to the wire because the Gophers ended up giving up points in the late parts of the game, and I know specifically that Northwestern game, he tried to really jump the route and anticipate it. The quarterback looked him off and then found the guy he should have been covering in a coverage for the touchdown to tie the game and go to overtime. So I think that knowing he has that instinctiveness and whatnot, sometimes it can hurt him a little bit if he isn't staying locked in and consistent with his what he's analyzed with the film breakdowns and whatnot.
What about his run support when he comes, especially when he's down in the box?
Yeah, no, he does really well, and like I said, he kind of plays really versatile across all the different ways you can use a safety. I think the biggest thing for him is sometimes maybe he can tackle a little bit too high, and so I think he's definitely going to want to stay low, especially at this NFL level where these running backs will punish you if you go too high on him. But overall, he seems to be really locked in. He had one of the highest tackle grades on the team over the past few years. I believe he was the highest tackling grade on the team last year. So he doesn't have a whole lot of missed tackles. He played like over 700 snaps last year, and I think he had a 9% missed tackle rate, which is relatively low for that many snaps. But when it comes from being too high in that tackle.
Just for those who aren't familiar with the Golden Gophers and the type of defense state play, can you just give us an overall like picture of it and how Tyler fit into that?
Yeah, so the Gophers are all about playing with speed and versatility. Their style has changed a bit year to year based on the personnel, and that was a strength of Joe Rossi, our former defensive coordinator who moved on to Michigan State. He was really an advocate of playing to whatever your players' strengths are. So at one point, when we had Eseze Otomewu and Boye Mafe, who's out with the Seahawks now, we had a lot of pass rush, and that was kind of the emphasis was that box. But after they left and as things went on, it really got into the secondary and playing with speed and really taking away the complexities of it all, but being able to play fast, quick, and instinctive. And I think that has been a really big factor of this Gophers defense. But the big thing for the Gophers has always been do not allow explosive plays. Get off the field on third down and explosive plays. Those are no-nos. If you give up first downs and you get explosive plays, you're going to find yourself on the bench real quick. So I think that has been ingrained in not only Tyler Nubin, but a lot of these players that are going to the league. And we're starting to see more success in those big play or big downs on the field for the Gophers that are in the NFL.
Has Tyler ever played? Well, I don't know what you guys call it in Minnesota, but we've been calling it the robber position in the defensive secondary. Has he ever played that?
Right, kinda like a nickel of sorts.
Yeah.
Occasionally, he's lined up there. I know that the Gophers have that has been a position that is honed in on in a heavy usage for the Gophers, and in these last couple of years, he hasn't been there too much. Occasionally, he'll work in there, but usually it's more straight safety. He does work into the box a little bit, but our nickel has typically been Jack Henderson this past year, and then prior to him, it was Flip Dixon for the 2 years, and they both put in probably over 500 snaps at that position. So maybe like 100 snaps or so in a 12 game, 13 game season, but not too often.
Yeah, I asked because his size and his, his bulk. I just wondered if, I'm sure he's not going to play like one position in the Giants defense. Maybe they're going to move him around in different packages and whatnot. So I was just curious if he had ever played that role because it looks like he's got the size to do it. I mean, I don't know if you agree or not, but because run support was a big problem last year for the Giants. The Giants' run defense not very good. And whatever the reason was, they're going to be counting obviously on, run support from the defensive secondary, I'm sure, on those obvious running downs.
For sure. Yeah, looking at last year, I actually have the numbers pulled up. He had 468 snaps from the free safety position, 198 in the box, and then 84 from the slot itself. So yeah, he does have a little bit of versatility, and I know it's a challenge he would be willing to take on. He does have the size to play it. One thing I'll mention to your listeners too, a lot of people have been looking at RAS scores, relative athletic scores when it comes to the draft, and a lot of people have looked at Tyler Nubin's and been like, "Oh, what happened?" People should know he had a cleanup surgery in January, and so he wasn't fully back to 100% at his pro day. It was very prevalent. I was at that pro day, and there were times where I was like, "Oh, he's just not 100% there." So I think by the time he's in training camp and everything, he will be good to go. And so I think you'll actually possibly be getting a steal with what those numbers say compared to what you'll see on the field.
All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about the intangibles that Tyler Nubin brings to the game. Don't go anywhere, Giant fans. Hey, Giant fans, we've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low and you're not sure if your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your buddies. And there's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, and even charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we are spotlighting all of the New York Giants draft picks, and we are doing it with our college hosts. So today we have Rob Kane, aka Kane of Locked On Golden Gophers. So please support their work as well. They do such a great job, not just on college football, but baseball, recruiting, you name it, they got it covered. And nobody does it like our college hosts. All right, we are talking about safety Tyler Nubin, the Giants' second-round draft pick out of the University of Minnesota. Kane, let's talk about some of the intangibles that this young man brings to the game. What stands out to you when you watch him or have been around him?
I think something that you'll get really quick is that he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He has that confidence and that swagger about him, and he always is going to dig deep and work harder. If he thinks he's there were multiple times in pressers we would ask him about certain things, and he would like hear about, oh, your name is in the draft talk, or oh, hear this and that, or you're a potential All-American, and he's like, I don't care about all that. I don't want to think about all that. I want to focus on how I can get my team wins, how I can get better, how I can improve myself and my program. And so I don't think that was just a bit. It wasn't just something to like rah your guys. That is who he is on and off the field. He's completely selfless and he's just always looking to work harder. And it was really cool to see the unique aspects of him and having his brother on the team as well, whom I know that was one of the reasons he really wanted to return last year, was to play another year with his brother. And they got to share some special moments on and off the field there.
What about, you mentioned he's a leader. What kind of leader is he?
He's definitely a vocal leader. He gets his guys going. He'll correct his guys, especially last year. Like I said, we had a lot of younger players on the field, and he's kind of coaching them up. And if they make a mistake, he's getting them back in the game. Lift your head up. Next play mentality. It's not time to hang your head or beat yourself up about it. It's time to move on. And I think that was really. You saw that growth in the defense throughout this past season. A lot of guys that were making issues or missing tackles or things like that to start the year were playing with a newfound confidence in those final games of the year. So it was definitely something great to see. He's definitely a leader of that defense last year, especially kind of the main leader, the voice across the entire defense. But even the year prior, he was kind of one of those guys that got the defense fired up, got the fists in the air on third down, got people dancing and having fun after a big play and celebrating and getting people hyped up to continue to bring their best to the team. And I think you'll get that heading to the NFL as well.
As you're describing him, I'm conjuring up images of Antrell Roll from several years back. I don't know if it's similar personality, but I did see a video that the Giants social media team put out with him, and what struck me is how decisive he was in his answers. It wasn't like he had to stop and think or go, like some guys do. It's just he got a question and boom, just answered it right away.
Absolutely. He's super well spoken. He was definitely one of my favorite Gophers to have in any pressers. When we had the opportunity to talk with him, you knew it was going to be a good day. So he's definitely going to have some good information, good tidbits, good nuggets for you, but also you just love to hear what the guy is thinking on and off the field.
When and I know you maybe don't know the Giants defense, as well as maybe I do, but, given what you do know about it, how do you see his best fit? And not just in terms of the position he plays, but what he can bring to the table?
I think overall he's just gonna bring a sense of we gotta do better. I think no matter what, even if he's a rookie, he's gonna have that mentality of like, I'm gonna learn. If I get beat in the preseason, if I get beat in a practice rep, if something goes wrong, I'm gonna make sure that never happens again. And I feel like even as a rookie or even as a younger player in the Gophers program, you felt that presence, and I feel like it helped his teammates around him start to take that same mentality, and I'm hoping that'll carry over to the Giants as well. But I think the biggest thing that I think he can really help out with is just playing fast, free, and instinctive. Like I said, he's not a speedy guy, but you'd think he's faster than he is just by how determined and how quickly he is to read and react.
You mentioned that he's very outspoken, not afraid, very bold, if you will. Playing out there in Minnesota, a little different than playing in the New York market. No offense to
No,
the Minnesota
absolutely.
market at all, but we all know that the New York market can eat guys up and spit them out alive. Tell me about his temperament, and do you think he's the type who can maybe keep his focus as opposed to maybe getting lured into the nightlife and the scene that is New York slash Hoboken, where a lot of the players end up living?
No, no, for sure. I think Tyler Nubin is kind of the definition of a mind on ice, heart on fire type of player. Like he plays with that passion, but he doesn't. In the 3 years that I've been covering this team, he isn't saying anything that you're like, "Ooh, why did you just give them bulletin board material?" Or "Ooh, why would you do that?" Or "Ooh, how could you say that about your teammates?" Or anything like that. Like when I think of the type of personality that Tyler Nubin gives off, it's not as calm as like what Jalen Hurts, and I know I shouldn't be bringing up an eagle on the Giants podcast, but that confidence that he has about him, that's the kind of confidence that Tyler Nubin brings. I think Tyler Nubin is still a calm, but is not as calm as like what you would see from Hurts, but he has that type of confidence and swagger to him.
What about, you mentioned he likes to coach up his teammates. How is he as far as coaching? Is he coachable, or, is he a freelancer?
Oh, no, he's definitely coachable, and I think that is helped lead to his success, and not only from coaches, but from other players as well. I mean, one of his biggest role models, one of his biggest influences is Antoine Winfield Jr., who he got to play with here, and I know that relationship had a huge impact on him, and how Antoine Winfield Jr. took him under his wing and kind of coached him up and helped him out and helped him become a leader and kind of learn from that leadership. He made an emphasis in a lot of these pressers to say, that's what I want to be for some of these younger guys. That's the impression I want to leave with this program. So definitely willing to take criticism, not only from coaches, but from players too.
Now, an interesting thing I found out, he's already picked out his jersey number here with the Giants, and I believe it was 31.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
believe there's a little bit of history behind that number with the Golden Gophers. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah. So to Antoine Winfield Jr., he went to the NFL and he ended up selecting the 31 number. Then last year, Jordan Howden was selected by the Saints and he ended up choosing that 31 number as well. And then now Tyler Nubin following that trend, kind of an homage to that Gophers safety room, those guys that were kind of all in together, grew with each other, and kind of, like I said, laid the blueprint. It's really unique and cool to see them kind of giving that shout out to each other and to the program.
Do you know if Tyler had any contact with those past Gophers?
Yeah, no, I know he talks to him all the time. He definitely had mentioned how those guys check in on him, and he kind of checked in with what they were doing in the league and whatnot. But they're super tight knit, super close guys. So I definitely think that they've been talking throughout the past year.
And I don't like to really compare guys, of today, his game to somebody of yesteryear. But that being said, since there is that deep tradition of good safeties coming out of Minnesota, whose game does Tyler's remind you of?
Honestly, that's really hard for me to say, just being completely transparent, because I think Tyler Nubin was just a little bit different. He was just like he had that more instinctive mentality. He was just kind of he's a player that I'm thinking one day I will be comparing others to, you know what I mean? Like people that I see have that more aggressive play style, but the calm and cool collected, or just having that clutch mentality, I'll probably first think of him moving forward as opposed to him kind of fitting that mold or fitting that similarity of someone else I've seen before him.
All right, Giant fans, coming up, we'll wrap things up with Kane of Locked On Golden Gophers as we talk more about Tyler Nubin. Don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. And as a New York Rangers fan, I'm really liking the odds of them going deep into this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. And speaking of odds, there's no better time than now to get involved with all the action sports has to offer. Right now, when you sign up for a new account with FanDuel, you will get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to hat tricks to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/locked on today and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked on Giants podcast. Again, keep it here all week long and into next week as we bring you each college host. They will be coming on to talk about their school's respective draft picks chosen by the New York Giants. We're also looking to maybe get a live stream for you on Friday night. As soon as I have details for you on that, I will let you know. And then, of course, next week we get to meet the rookies. They'll come in for a 3-day mini camp. There'll be 2 days available, of media access available. And Kane, to that effect, you mentioned how Tyler Nubin has a personality, and it sounds like he's a really, an enjoyable personality. What's something about him that maybe people don't know outside of the Golden Gopher community?
I think it's how close that family is. The family as a whole was beloved by this program, both on and off the field, but also how special it was for those two brothers to play. I mean, his brother was D-back committed to or walking on for the Gophers. And then he ended up switching positions to running back. He was like the fifth running back on the depth chart last year. And the Gophers had so many injuries in that running back room that his brother ended up being the starter for the Michigan State game. And Tyler Nubin, one thing you'll learn about him is he is a guy who really speaks things into existence. And he mentioned to the media after the game that he told his brother before the game, look, you're going to play amazing. You're going to do great. And we're both going to be sitting in that presser after the game talking about how both of us had an amazing game. And that came to fruition. His brother had a 200-yard, 2-touchdown game against Michigan State. And when his brother scored that first touchdown, Tyler Nubin, there was a video. I was trying to see if I could get it, but it looks like the initial user had it locked, his profile locked on X. So, but it was like Jordan Nubin scores a touchdown and Tyler Nubin grabs his helmet and takes off down the field and was the first one to congratulate him as soon as he kind of got off. So that special family bond, but also Tyler Nubin just having the willpower of like speaking it into existence, definitely something that he has said time and time again with different opportunities here in Minnesota, including some clutch interceptions he's made down the line. So that was kind of a fun story here.
How much do you think having his brother helped with his maturity? Because he sounds I think he's only 22 years old, I think, or he's going to turn 22. But it sounds like he's, shall we say, a little bit of an older soul. I mean, how much was that is due to having his brother there, or is there something else you can point to?
I think it's just like I said, that whole family and how he was raised. I mean, his mama was a big figure on Gophers Twitter, but also within the parents across the program and everything like that. I think they've just had a really great childhood, a great family support system, and I think that comes along with how kind of the temperament he's had. But then, yeah, having his younger brother on the team and being able to kind of nurture him into that type of role and speak his confidence into it because he was a walk-on freshman as opposed to a scholarship player like Tyler Nubin. So it's just like being able to kind of guide and instill that confidence in somebody younger, and not only him, but the other D-backs as well. I think that goes a long way. But then I think being able to work with Antoine Winfield Jr. and things like that, he's gathered and garnered some of those leadership aspects too.
If you could design the perfect role for Tyler, and I'm not just talking again a specific position, maybe first down, second down, third down, and so forth. What do you think would be a good fit for him in this his rookie season coming up?
Honestly, I know it might sound like, I guess, a little high ceiling maybe, but I think he can honestly work his way to a full-time starter at that safety position just because of knowing the mentality and how serious he takes studying the film and getting into knowing where he should be at all times and how different audibles and different coverage looks work and where he should be when and how he communicates with the defense. That was a huge thing, is he was a great communicator on that back end of the defense as well. So maybe he starts off in more of a smaller traditional role early on, but would not be surprised if he worked his way into a starting role by the end of the season. And that's similar to kind of like what we saw from Jordan Howden last year, who was a 5th round draft pick. But when he got the opportunity, he really grasped onto it. And a lot of his teammates just praised how instinctive and fluid and understanding he was in that position.
What about special teams? Did he do a whole lot of that in Minnesota?
Oh yeah, for sure. He was very adamant. That was actually a question I asked him in one of the pressers. I have that video on X, but I asked him why it was so important for him to be on special teams as a starter, as a defensive captain and a leader on this defense. And he said, we value special teams just as much as we value offense or defense. And if you're a starter on a special teams, you're a starter just like anybody else. And so I take pride in being on that line and being able to change the game in that manner. So it's definitely not something he like was a player that like looked above it or anything like that. He wanted to be in on the action however he could. And even in some of the spring games and things like that, he would mess with Coach Fleck and he would be like, work me in on the offense. And I remember last year's spring game, they found a way to get him a play and he ended up scoring a touchdown on that play. So he's definitely a do it all. Like, I want to help my team however I can. So whatever those coaches ask of him in New York, he will do that and then keep working to be however of a service he can at any point in the season.
Coming into the Giants, obviously they want to hit the ground running, but is there one thing in particular that maybe concerns you a little bit, at least at first, as he gets acclimated to the NFL?
I think the biggest thing is just not letting like faster receivers. I think of Jalen Hyatt on your team actually. Not letting them get behind you. I know that he isn't the fastest player right away, so I think adjusting to knowing how much he can get away with or how much ground he has to cover and how quickly he can do that. I think that might be a little bit of process in these early stages of training camp and once we get into the preseason and whatnot. But I think come once he gets his feet wet and once he gets that experience going, I think he'll really learn his spots and he'll take that extra time to figure out how to put himself in the best position.
Kane, I appreciate all the insight on Tyler Nubin. I tell you, I've seen a few videos of him. He seems like a really, great guy to chat with. And I love those guys because, they're just so, they don't give you the one word answer, the 2 word answers that you have to kind of drag stuff out of them.
Right.
But I'm looking forward to meeting him. Last question, anything in particular that I should be looking for when I see him at the mini camp?
Um, I don't think so. I think just be looking for a guy that is open to answering any questions and he'll give you the real right away. He's not gonna uh try to be timid or anything like that. He'll give you his unapologetic self. He's not gonna say anything that's like over the top or extreme or anything like that, but you'll get a raw and real Tyler Nubin, and I think you'll come to love it in his time in New York.
And of course, he'll probably play the same way, I would imagine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am looking forward to meeting him as well as all the Giant rookies. So, Kane, thank you so much for coming on with me here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Folks, please check out Kane's work. Again, he's on Locked On Golden Gophers. Check out all our college hosts. We've got teams. I mean, regardless of who your team is, we probably got a host covering it. So do give them your support if you can. And Giant fans, keep it here. We'll have more profiles, more breakdowns of Giants draft picks as we continue our look at the class of 2024. For Rob Kane, I'm Patricia Traina. Giant fans, I'll see you tomorrow.